In this presentation, we're going to learn how to form the present perfect in Spanish, el presente perfecto. El participio pasado también se usa para formar los tiempos perfectos, es decir, los tiempos con el verbo have. Past participles are used in Spanish to form what we call the perfect tenses. These are the tenses that use the in English use the verb have. For example, I have worked, we have seen, they have gone, etc. El primero de estos tiempos es el presente perfecto del indicativo. The first of these tenses, because there are many of them, the first one we'll learn is what we call the present perfect indicative. It corresponds to the present tense of the English verb have, I have, you have, etc., plus the past participle. We call it present perfect because it uses present of have as opposed to the past tense of have, such as the word had, etc. There are many perfect tenses. I have gone, I had gone, I will have gone, etc. And they all have different names, and learning the names of them is half the struggle. But the present perfect tense is, for example, I have done something. Let's take a look at some examples. We always use the word have. I have, you have, he has, she has, etc. And we combine it with a past participle. So I have spoken, you have eaten, she has worked, they have returned, etc. That's what we mean by present perfect. ¿Cuáles son algunos ejemplos del presente perfecto indicativo en inglés? Let's look at some present perfect examples in English. What would the present perfect of the verb to be? Well, it would be I have been. So have been, it's not just have and it's not just been, but it's those two words together that form the present perfect. And there's an example sentence. What about the verb to take? Well, that would be have taken. They have taken the class. So have taken is the present perfect of the verb to take. To shout, the fans have shouted. To pray, he has prayed. To bring, have you brought. Notice, have you brought your money? Have you brought, and the you, when we ask a question, we often put the word you in between the word have and the past participle. Muy bien. The verb to have, what would be the present perfect of the verb to have? Well, we have to combine have with its past participle, which is the word had. So we say we have had a good time. That's the present perfect of the verb to have. En español se usan las formas del verbo haber en el presente, más el participio pasado que usted ya aprendió. So in Spanish, to form the present perfect, we don't use the verb tener, which you know is the verb to have. That means to have an object or possess something, like tengo dinero, I have money, tengo hambre, I have hunger or I am hungry. But for forming the perfect tenses, we use the verb haber instead, which is what we call the auxiliary verb. That's the verb that we use to form all of the perfect tenses. En este caso, el participio pasado es invariable, es decir, que nunca cambia de forma. When we form the perfect tenses by using haber plus past participles, past participles in this case will not change. They are what we call invariable. So when you learned past participles before as adjectives, you have to make them agree in gender and number. For example, if I say, she is enrolled in the class, I would say, ella está matriculada en la clase, because there it's being used as an adjective. But when I use them, past participles with the verb haber, have, you never change the past participle's gender. And I'll give you some examples later on. So we use the forms of the verb haber, which you can see on the screen. And the verb haber is very irregular. You can see the form, the yo form, yo, he. It doesn't end in an o or end in an oy. All of the forms of haber are irregular, and you need to memorize them. So I'm going to go through and say them, and I want you to say them after me. Yo he, tú has, usted, él, ella, ha, nosotros hemos, vosotros habéis, ustedes, ellos, ellas, han. So notice H is silent. So let's go over them again. Has, ha, hemos, habéis, han. Muy bien. So we take the forms of the verb haber and we combine them with past participles. And you should have already learned past participles. Remember, past participles end in ADO if they're AR verbs. They end in IDO if they are ER or IR verbs. And then we have several irregulars, such as the one on the screen at the bottom. You can see roto. We also have escrito, dicho, hecho, abierto, and so on. So the regular ones are ADO and IDO, and then the irregular ones you just have to memorize. So if we combine some of these, for example, if you want to say I have spoken, you just say yo he and hablado. Now we want to run it all together and say yo he hablado, and very often you don't even you don't say the pronoun in front. So if you want to say I have spoken, you just say he hablado. You have eaten, tú has comido, and we say it tú has comido or just has comido. And notice they run together, and sometimes you really don't hear the form of haber very clearly. For example, if we want to say she has spoken, we would say ella ha hablado. And normally we would just say hablado. Ella ha hablado. And it runs together because you've got the H's are silent and the A's kind of combined. So you have to attune your ear to hearing it well. Or to just understanding if somebody says ella ha hablado, they're saying she has spoken. We have worked, nosotros hemos trabajado, or simply hemos trabajado. They have had, that would be ellos han, the last one on the list, han, and then the verb or the word tenido. So han tenido, that would be they have had. Han tenido éxito, they have had success. Or han tenido hambre, they have been hungry. Muy bien. So just combine a form of the verb haber in present, has, ha, hemos, habéis, han, plus a past participle. Once again, remember the past participle here, as I mentioned, will not change in gender. So if a female were to say, I have eaten, she would still say he comido. You would not change comido to comida. Because when you use past participles with haber, they do not change in gender. Muy bien. Now we're going to do a práctica. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you several sentences here. I'm going to leave out the verb form, but I'm going to put it in parentheses at the end, the verb that we're working with, and you'll have a chance to put the correct verb form in. And let's do number one together as an example. So la pregunta es, the question is, ¿alguna vez blank en ese restaurante? So you're asking a friend here, have you ever eaten at that restaurant? Now, alguna vez is how we say ever, and the verb is comer, to eat. So we want to say, have you ever eaten? So have eaten is the question, is the form that we want. And you're talking to your friend, so this is the tú form. So we know we need the tú form of the verb haber, which from the previous screen would be has, and we pronounce that as. And then we need the past participle of the verb comer, which we know would be comido. So if you want to ask somebody, have you ever eaten at that restaurant? You would say, ¿alguna vez has comido en ese restaurante? ¿Has comido? In fact, if you were just to ask somebody, ¿has comido? That means, have you eaten? Muy bien, vamos a mirar número 2. Mi familia blank Disney World 2 veces. And we have the verb visitar. So what we want to say here is my family has visited Disney World twice. So we want the form, first we have to think of what form of haber would be used with mi familia. Well, mi familia, my family, that's the same as saying it or he or she. Family is not they, family is one unit. So we want to use the singular form. So if yo he, I have, tú has, you have, well, then the next one would be the one that would go with familia, and that's a, letters H-A. And then we want the past participle of visitar, which would be visitado. So we would say, mi familia ha visitado Disney World 2 veces. Vamos a mirar número 3. ¿Qué le blank tú al perro? ¿Qué le blank tú al perro? And we have the verb hacer, which means to make or to do. So in this question, it's a parent probably talking to a child and asking, what have you done to the dog? Have you done? So you're talking to a child. So have you would be the word has, H-A-S. And done, remember the verb hacer is an irregular past participle, so it's not going to end in IDO. You have to remember that the past participle of hacer is hecho. So has hecho. What have you done? ¿Qué le has hecho tú al perro? And notice it just runs together. ¿Qué le has hecho? So has hecho sounds like one word. ¿Qué le has hecho tú al perro? What have you done to the dog? Número 4. El ingeniero blank el plan. El ingeniero blank el plan. Ingeniero, engineer, and then you have el plan, which is the plan. So the verb aprobar means to pass a class, but it also means to approve. So what we're saying here is the engineer has approved the plan. So what form of haber would you use with el ingeniero? Well, that's the same as saying he. So he has. What word would that be? Muy bien, that would be H-A, that's the one that goes with he. And the past participle of the aprobar, well, that's a nice regular past participle, so you drop off AR, put on ADO. So to say he has approved, we would say, el ingeniero ha aprobado el plan. Now let me make a comment about pronunciation here. The first word there is just the letter, you only hear because H is silent, and then aprobado also begins with the sound so this is going to run together, and you're actually going to hear el ingeniero ha aprobado el plan, and you can't even really tell that there's two words there, but that's good Spanish. You want it to kind of run together, and you just have to rely on getting good hearing, hearing it over and over to understand what's actually being said. So it takes a lot of practice. But el ingeniero ha aprobado el plan. He has approved the plan. Número 5. Nosotros ya blank la investigación. Ya means already. So what we're saying, what we want to say here is we already have done the investigation. Hacer is to make or to do. So in this case, we want to say we have done the investigation, or we have made the investigation. Well, what's the form of haber that we need for nosotros? Well, if you remember from the previous screen, that would be hemos, H-E-M-O-S, hemos. And once again, the past participle of the verb hacer is one of your irregular ones, and that's hecho. So to say we have done or we have made the investigation, hemos hecho. Nosotros ya hemos hecho la investigación. Número 6, our last one. Ustedes blank el gimnasio. You're asking a question to a group of people, and you're asking about the verb abrir, which means to open, and then we're talking about el gimnasio, the gym. So the question we're wanting to ask this group of people is, have you all opened the gym? Have opened. So the form of haber that would go with ustedes would be han, H-A-N, and the past participle of the verb abrir, that is an irregular one, so it's not going to end in IDO. You have to remember that abrir is abierto. So to ask this couple or people or a group of people, ¿Ustedes han abierto el gimnasio? Have you opened the gym? Muy bien. I hope that has helped you to understand the use of the present perfect tense, and with your practice from the book, you'll be able to understand it. Muchas gracias por su atención y nos vemos en la próxima presentación.